Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Thursday morning webinar. I'm not Andrew, as you can see. My name is Chloe Tetra, and I'm the coaching lead with Ready Care. I'm taking over for Andrew this morning on an introduction to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So what we're going to be looking at this morning is understanding non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, the causes and the implications, the prevalence of NAFLD, as it's also called, or NAFLD, and its impacts. And more importantly, we're going to look at the role of diet and lifestyle in actually reversing NAFLD, which was thought of as being this impossible feat. But actually, thankfully, we're seeing now a massive, massive change in 180 in the literature and real life cases and practices of people actively reversing that cirrhosis, that NAFLD, and that damage to the liver, going right back into normal liver markers. So let's take a quick look at understanding NAFLD. So to begin with, I suppose, let's talk about what fatty liver disease actually entails. So a lot of people would associate fatty liver disease with excessive alcohol consumption, which is a cause of fat accumulation in the liver. But actually, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, as the name might suggest, is characterized by fat buildup in the liver that is unrelated to alcohol intake. So this form of liver disease is diagnosed when fat is detected in the liver and alcohol consumption isn't sufficient enough to explain it. So if you're going to the doctor, seeing some of your liver markers go and you say, look, there's no way that I'm drinking, I have a sporadic glass of wine here and there. That's usually when non-alcoholic fatty liver disease will be diagnosed. So it's the most common liver disease in Western countries. It even surpasses alcoholic liver disease due to the dramatic rise in the consumption of refined carbohydrates and sugars we find in processed foods that make up the bulk of the classical Western typical diet. So the condition affects millions of people and poses really, really serious health risks if it's left unaddressed. So some of the consequences of untreated NAFLD can include cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, which is often thought of as a sister condition to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease for reasons that we'll get into in a sec, stroke, liver cirrhosis, and even the likes of liver cancer. So understanding and reversing NAFLD is critical not just for liver health, but also to avoid some of these types of metabolic health diseases that are associated with it. So the causes, which I'll have touched on a little bit there. So NAFLD develops when the liver stores excess fat, which can't be explained by alcohol use, as we've said. So the primary drivers of the condition are actually dietary factors. And even though it might seem a bit counterintuitive, it's actually the high intake of sugars and refined carbohydrates that predicate whether someone is more likely to have NAFLD or not. So these elements will be prevalent in loads of processed foods, which unfortunately dominate a lot of the kind of Western Hemisphere's food intake. Processed foods tend to be cheaper, they tend to be more accessible, and we tend to eat a lot of them because they're very tasty, unfortunately. So unlike alcoholic liver disease, which is caused by excess alcohol consumption, NAFLD can affect individuals regardless of their alcohol intake, which is really the point I want to really drive home in this section. You don't have, like we think of minding our liver health by not having a few glasses of wine, by not doing this, that, and the other thing. But actually, unbeknownst to us, by following a lot of the quote unquote healthy eating guidelines that are out there that will tell us, eat an awful lot of grains, make sure that something like 25% of your plate is, grains, chickpeas, pulses, lots of foods that we would think of as being health foods, can actually have a really, really negative impact on our liver health. And I'll go into it now in a minute, but actually fruit is really detrimental. And again, it's one of the ones that has been kind of pushed on us as a population as fruit being the go-to healthy snack. And we'll touch on in a minute as to why that may not be. But with regards to some of the more concerning aspects of NAFLD, it's the potential to go undiagnosed for many, many years. So liver function tests, which would commonly be used in medical checkups, they might not always detect fatty liver disease. And oftentimes, it's not until much more advanced tests such as fibroscans or controlled attenuation parameters, which is a mouthful, but CAP or CAP tests, are conducted that a diagnosis is confirmed. So as a result of that, many people are unfortunately unaware that they have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease until it progresses to much more severe stages. Now, again, that sounds very scary, and it can be. It very, very well can be because of its implications. I can't even talk. Because of its implications in some of the cardiovascular diseases, liver cancers, and what have you. But actually, as I'm saying this, there's two truths can be true next to each other. Yes, it is very, very serious, but yes, it is exceedingly reversible. And in my own practice with clients, like I've seen very, very severe liver cirrhosis from NAFLD be totally reversed. Like I'm thinking of a particular patient. She had FibroScan results of 21, which is exceedingly severe liver cirrhosis. And after about 4 to 5 months of doing a low carbohydrate approach and a dietary protocol to treat that, she's gone right back into totally normal ranges with a FibroScan result of 9, which, like, it's absolutely miraculous. Like, it's remarkable results of what a diet alone can do. Now, there's a professor from the UK, Roy Taylor, and he's an expert in metabolic health, and he's very aptly described the liver's condition as a silent scream that begins long before diabetes and other health issues manifest. For years, fat accumulation in the liver gradually impairs its functions and increases the risk of serious disease. Now, remember, your liver is your filtration organ. So over time, accrued, as it progresses, your body's going to struggle an awful lot more with filtering and detoxing. It's your organ's natural detox. People talk about, oh, I need to do a detox for this, that, and the other thing. What can I buy? What can I buy as a detox? Well, really, your liver is your primary organ of detoxification. So making sure that your liver is as healthy as can be is going to make sure that you always have a little detox factory inside of your body. So that silent buildup that can happen over years leads to symptom of metabolic syndrome. Things like insulin resistance, which is something that we are caught about quite a lot in our videos because of its massive impact on health. Things like elevated blood pressure, weight gain, especially around the abdomen. So the prevalence of NAFLD and its impacts, which I'm floating in and out of here. So the prevalence is, as you might have guessed by the way that I'm talking about it, it's alarmingly high. Studies have shown that approximately 40% to 60%, depending on the country, of adults in Western countries have some degree of fatty liver disease. So I'm going to make a little average of that. And let's say 50-50, getting that 40 and that 60. That's my math skills coming out in force here. It's around 1 in 2 adults, which is shocking, will have a degree of fatty liver disease. So if you see weight gain around the midsection, things that people call apple shape, which I think is a really diplomatic way of saying something else. So if you see that typical apple shape that people have a tendency to associate with middle-age spread, a middle-age spread isn't real, right? A middle-age spread is a symptom of organs starting to go, burp, burp, I'm starting to break down. Please have a look at this. So increases in blood pressure, cholesterol issues, these are not just age related conditions. And, you know, there's this kind of thought process that as you reach 40, oh, you know, your body's starting to disintegrate. It's very normal to have high blood pressure. It's very normal to be put on a statin for cholesterol issues and to gain weight. It's normal if things are working abnormally, which unfortunately, if we look at the percentages of adults and their risk factors, if we're looking at 1 and 2, that unfortunately starts to become quite normal. And something becoming normal does not mean that we need to normalize it. So these symptoms are indicators of metabolic dysfunction, which often includes improper fat storage in the liver, the midsection, and other organs. So if those who are overweight or obese or have that apple shape, so in those that have that, the incidence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease jumps to around, again, bump 60% at least. Remember, the caveat here is that this is hard to diagnose. So of the cases that we're aware of, 60% of people that have that classical makes it sound very French design, that classical apple shape, will have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So the kind of disturbing factor where this is concerned is, I'm talking about adults here, but in children, research has shown that 30%, which is nearly a third of overweight children, have fatty liver disease, putting them at risk for future health problems really, really, really early on in their life, including type 2 diabetes, including metabolic difficulties. And when you hear type 2 diabetes and metabolic dysfunction, I'd invite you to equate that to the risk of cardiovascular disease multiplying exponentially. So NAFLD is also a significant independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease, even in the absence of other conditions. Having fatty liver disease can really, really increase that. So even if there is no type 2 diabetes and blood pressure difficulties that we think of as cardiovascular disease risk factors, even just having the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease increases cardiovascular risk. So this really, really, I know it's like I'm scaring people. I'm scaring for a reason, because it is serious and because it can be reversed. So the good news, the role of diet and lifestyle in reversing it. And it is almost totally, well, actually, it is totally, don't mind the almost, it is totally reversible through diet and lifestyle. The primary focus here should be on reducing the intake of refined carbohydrates and sugars, which are the major contributing factor to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I've said it so often, it just went out of my head there. So that seems really counterintuitive because, contrary to popular beliefs, dietary fats like those found in eggs, butter, and fatty meats are not, and I repeat, are not the main culprit. Scientific studies have consistently shown that low carb, high fat diets, and when I'm talking high fat, I'm talking high whole food fats, not triple fried chicken breast from KFCs or anything levels of fat. I'm talking things like butter, one food, coconut, one food, olive, one food, whole unprocessed sources of fats can significantly reduce liver fat. So fat from food is friend, not foe. Fat does not make you fat, and fat does not create accumulations of fat in the liver. And actually, our thought process around that since the 80s of demonizing fat from foods, and as a result, people consuming less of those and more carbohydrates, that has not gone well for metabolic disease rates at all globally. In fact, you see a really sharp increase in those ever since fat from foods has come down. So one pivotal study compares the effects of low-fat diet, which is typically high in carbohydrates, and a lower carbohydrate diet, particularly in the low-carb group. saw nearly double the reduction in liver fat compared to those on the low-fat diet. Despite both groups losing in around the same amount of weight, the low-carbohydrate group saw a massive reduction in insulin levels, blood sugar levels, all of the lovely conditions that I've mentioned. Now, the name of the study is something absolutely wonderful, like carbohydrates, a weapon of mass destruction on your liver, which is brilliant. I love a bit of drama in medical literature. So to kind of implement that in a sustainable diet for yourself, creating that sustainable diet, it involves understanding the role of different macronutrients. When I say macronutrients, it's fats, proteins, carbohydrates, the three major food groups, and making informed choices around them that are in line with the scientific and medical literature that will say low carb, high fat, better than low fat, high carb. Prioritize healthy fats. So incorporate sources of healthy fats like avocados, olive oil, nuts, seeds, and fatty fish. These fats provide essential nutrients that not only help to reduce inflammation, right, because they're a good source of omega-3, and omega-3 is an absolutely brilliant anti-inflammatory. So if you're finding yourself with aches, pains, stiffness in the body, high inflammation throughout, and that can be in the gut, if you're finding yourself having things like bloating, or IBS type symptoms, and joint inflammation, those kind of things. Omega-3 fatty acids are brilliant for that overall. So it's a great idea to start bringing them in. Things like chia seeds, for example, if you have a tablespoon of chia seeds, you have about 1,000 milligrams of omega-3, which is in and around the same as one of the ones that you'd find on the shelf in one of these omega-3 from fish supplements. So whole food version of that, absolutely brilliant for not only reducing your inflammation, increasing your cognitive health, your cardiovascular health, but more importantly to do it today, it improves liver health by reducing liver fat and inflammation in the liver. So prioritizing those healthy fats. Also remember, when it comes to taking fats in your diet, and why I'd be bravely anti-low fat across the board, right, is that old truism, you are what you eat. So your eyes are made of fats, your brain is made of fats. So when you decide to have a low-fat diet, your eyes and your brain oftentimes suffer from it. You need these particular fats to create parts of your body and to sustain and nourish parts of your body that are made up of fats. Reduce your refined carbohydrates. So limit your intake of foods high in refined carbs, things like white breads, brown breads. All carbohydrates turn to sugars. It doesn't matter if they're white bread version, brown bread version, white pasta, brown pasta, all of them will. So even though brown versions of things are a little bit better comparatively to the white version of it, the even better scenario would be to try to avoid them altogether. Things like porridge, sugary cereals, sweets. These foods cause rapid spikes in blood sugar levels, and they increase your insulin production and fat storage in the liver. Opting for whole grains and complex carbohydrates in moderation, and focus on quality over quantity. Now, the big one that I'll say where liver health is concerned is to really, really limit your intake of fructose. So fructose is naturally found in, as the name suggests, fruit. And although fruit has been kind of heralded as this amazing snack, this healthy alternative, fructose hits the liver straight away. So basically, as fructose comes in, your body isn't really sure what to do with it, and it goes straight into the liver, and really, really is one of the major things that is implemented in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So if you think of those poor, unfortunate geese that are used to make foie gras, so that exceedingly cruel fine dining dish of using fattened geese liver as a type of pate. It's this type of meat that's utilized. So in an organic foie gras, what would you call them? Farm, I guess. That's a very grim farm. What they do is they create cirrhosis of the liver by feeding the geese over-ripened fruit, because over-ripened fruit, the more a fruit ripens, the more sugars and fructose are in the fruit. So the quickest way to fatten the geese's liver is to feed them fructose. Now, I know that we are not a goose. We are not a goose, damn it, we're human beings. But it's a very, very similar mechanism with humans. The more fructose present, the more it stores in the liver. And if you are somebody with an apple shape, avoid apples, basically. You're much, much better off going for fruit that would be low in sugars, things like raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, things like plums, melon, coconut. All of these ones are exceedingly better for you and for your liver health than the likes of apples, grapes, pears, and especially bananas. So try to avoid these as best as you can. Try to replace that fruit snack with the much, much lower berry ones overall. Limiting sugar intake, of course, and switching out from sugars to the likes of stevia. If you're sweetening, be it home baking, where you're replacing flour with almond flour. If you're making home baking, switch out your sugar for the likes of xylitol, stevia, or erythritol. They're all low sugar alternatives, low carbohydrates. Increase your vegetable consumption. Go from potatoes, sweet potatoes, those guys, starchy vegetables, to above ground vegetables, things like broccoli, spinach, kale, bell peppers. They're all low in carbohydrates, but high in fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and make them an excellent alternative for the likes of liver health and overall well-being altogether. Focus on lean proteins, things like poultry, fish, tofu if you're a vegetarian, or what's the other fella? Tofu and tempeh, tiny tempeh. Protein supports your muscle maintenance and promotes a feeling of fullness, which can help to regulate your appetite and will help to balance your blood sugar levels. And if your blood sugar levels are balanced and your insulin is down, your liver health is going to thank you for it, basically. Right, so that's the whirlwind bus tour of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It is the most prevalent liver disease in the Western world. Now, taking into consideration how much emphasis we place on our liver health by not consuming alcohol, which, is the right thing to do anyway. In the Western world, we have a tendency to overconsume processed foods, carbohydrates, and sugars. And as a direct result, that is the non-alcoholic liver disease is the most prevalent liver disease that's happening there. It's exceedingly serious for the vast variety of reasons that I've mentioned on today's introductory talk on it, but it is totally reversible. Now, if you're looking for a more in-depth kind of medical look at non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, Andrew has a brilliant talk in our archives on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which you can access by clicking on our link and going through our archive and library of videos. He goes into things in a lot more depth as our clinical lead. But for today, I hope that you have found this introduction helpful. If you've any questions or comments, do feel free to pop them in the comment section. I don't know why I went to my name there. Sorry, my name. Otherwise, make sure to like and subscribe for more of this type of content. Andrew will be back with you guys next week. Otherwise, have a lovely rest of your day, and we will chat to you guys next time. Bye now.